Have you noticed that your backyard has become quieter? It didn't happen all at once. It wasn't a single event. There wasn't a specific day when you woke up and thought, something has changed here. It was gradual. It was gentle. It was the kind of change that happens slowly enough that the human brain doesn't register it as a loss, but as a new normal. You simply stopped hearing certain things. Stopped seeing certain presences. And at some point, without realizing it, you accepted that the backyard had always been like this. Quiet. Empty. Normal. That's not normal. 20 years ago, there were birds you no longer see. 10 years ago, there were songs you no longer hear. 5 years ago, there was movement, landing, life in the branches that are now still. And the most disturbing thing is not the absence. It's that you got used to it without realizing you were getting used to it. And if someone asks you why the birds disappeared, the answer that will naturally come to mind is simple. It was the neighbor's cat. It was the hawk that appeared in the neighborhood. It was the bad weather. It was the construction on the street. An easy answer to a question that deserves a much more disturbing one. Because what's scaring the birds away from your yard isn't what you think. It's not a predator you can see. It's not a noise you can hear. It's something operating at frequencies, wavelengths, and scales that are completely invisible to your senses. It's something that humans created without realizing they were creating a problem. And it's happening right now. In your yard. In your neighborhood. In your city. At this very moment. Stay until the end of this video. Because the last point isn't just about the birds. It's about us. And when you understand it, you won't be able to undo what you'll feel. Welcome to Wild Mindset. The channel where we stop and look at what nobody wants to see, and we truly look. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because what we publish here every week is the kind of knowledge that changes the way you see the world around you. Turn on notifications. And stay until the end, because the last point of this video is what will make you want to sit in silence for a while. Not out of sadness. Out of responsibility. Let's begin. There is a thrush. Just one. Let's talk about it. He was born in a dense hedge at the back of a suburban garden. A garden that, when he was born, still had enough insects. Still had enough earthworms near the surface. Still had the nighttime silence necessary for his nervous system to regulate itself, recover, and prepare for the next day. A garden that, in the language of biology, was still a functional habitat. 2 years later, the garden still looks the same to you. The same plants. The same hedge. The same lawn. But for the thrush, everything has changed. The first sign was sleep. Not sleep in the metaphorical sense. Biological, measurable sleep, with hormones and circadian rhythms and neural recovery phases that depend on one specific thing to function: darkness. Real darkness. The kind of darkness that existed before humans invented artificial lighting and decided to use it 24 hours a day. The street lamp installed 2 years ago casts a cone of orange light that touches the hedge where the thrush sleeps. It's not an intense light. To you, it would be almost imperceptible. But for the endocrine system of a bird that has evolved over millions of years to respond to the total absence of light as a signal that it's time to enter recovery mode, that faint light is a constant, repeated, uninterrupted signal that says, it's not night yet. Stay alert. Keep monitoring. Don't fall asleep. And the body obeys. Cortisol levels, the stress hormone, remain elevated throughout the night. Deep sleep, the phase in which memory is consolidated, tissues are repaired, and the immune system is strengthened, is repeatedly shortened or interrupted. The thrush wakes before dawn not because it is rested, but because its body has reached a tension limit that it can no longer sustain. And it begins the day with the physiological resources of a being that hasn't truly slept. Week after week. Month after month. Immunity drops. Foraging ability decreases because concentration and response speed are compromised. The willingness to reproduce reduces because the body understands, at some deep biochemical level, that this is not a safe enough environment to raise offspring. And eventually, the thrush stops using that hedge. Stops using that garden. You look out the window and think it left for some reason you can't identify. The reason is 30 watts. It hangs from a pole 8 meters from your sidewalk. And you never connected it with the silence that settled in your yard. But the story doesn't end with a single thrush. Because when one bird suffers, the whole flock gets the message. Birds possess an alarm communication system that, in terms of sophistication and reach, far surpasses what most people imagine. It's not just a warning cry when a predator appears. It's a structured language, with gradations of urgency, specific information about the type of threat, the distance, and the direction. Researchers who studied the alarm calls of corvids and thrushes documented that different predators, cat, hawk, owl, human, receive distinct alarm vocalizations, recognized by other bird species that have never had direct evolutionary contact with these predators. The alarm crosses species boundaries. It's a lingua franca of danger. Now imagine what happens when this system is chronically activated by threats that are not predators, but which the bird's nervous system processes as constant danger. Traffic noise above a certain frequency activates stress responses that are biologically indistinguishable from responses to a predator. The electromagnetic field of certain electrical equipment, picked up by the bird's sensory system, produces a state of confusion and discomfort that translates into escape or avoidance behavior. The low-frequency vibration of air conditioning, industrial machinery, heavy highway traffic, infrasound that you don't hear, reaches the bird's body as pressure, as discomfort, as a persistent signal that something is wrong. And what's most disturbing, when one bird within the flock enters a state of chronic stress and begins to emit diffuse and imprecise alarm signals, the other individuals respond. The tension spreads. The entire flock enters a state of heightened vigilance that consumes energy, impairs feeding, and interferes with reproduction. A garden that once attracted dozens of species begins to be avoided not because each individual tested and disapproved of the environment, but because the collective information of the group says, this is not safe. And no bird questions the wisdom of the group. Absence multiplies. In a cascade. Silently. Without you even realizing it was a cascade. And we haven't even reached the deepest layer yet. Because what the birds are perceiving in your backyard goes far beyond what any human being can detect with their own senses. Remember the quantum compass we mentioned in other videos on this channel? The cryptochrome proteins in birds' eyes that make the Earth's magnetic field partially visible as a sensory overlay. This system is one of the most precise navigational instruments that evolution has ever produced. And it is extraordinarily sensitive to artificial electromagnetic interference. A study published in the scientific journal Nature in 2014 by researchers at the University of Oldenburg, Germany, demonstrated something that caused real discomfort in the scientific community when it was published. Low-frequency electromagnetic fields generated by common electronic devices, computers, televisions, lighting systems with dimmers, are sufficient to completely disable the magnetic compass of migratory birds in urban environments. They don't reduce it. They don't partially interfere. They disable it. The bird, which should sense north with millimeter precision within a typical urban electromagnetic influence radius, can no longer reliably distinguish its orientation. Imagine what that's like for a being whose survival has depended for 100 million years on knowing exactly where it is. Losing one's bearings isn't an inconvenience. It's a form of physiological terror for which there is no evolutionary preparation. The environment seems visually normal. The smell is correct. The sounds are recognizable. But the sense that tells you where you are in space, the sense that anchors all orientation, all migration, every decision of where to go, that sense is producing noise. Contradictions. Incoherent signals. And the bird does the only thing any living being does when the environment becomes cognitively intolerable. It leaves. Or avoids returning. Your backyard may be electromagnetically polluted in ways none of your senses can detect. And birds, with sensors that have existed for 100 million years longer than any human technology, are detecting this pollution in real time and voting with their wings. But this is where the popular narrative lies to you. And the lie is comfortable, so it endures. When people think about the enemies of urban birds, the list that comes to mind is always the same. Domestic cats. Hawks. Crows stealing nests. Maybe generic pesticides. A list of visible, tangible villains that the brain can process as a threat because they are concrete beings with a physical presence. You see the cat. You see the hawk. You can point the finger. But the data tells a different story. A story where the villains have no face. Research conducted by the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute estimates that in the United States alone, between 600 million and 1 billion birds die each year from collisions with glass windows. Transparent glass that birds cannot distinguish from the open air because it reflects surrounding vegetation, and the avian brain lacks the evolutionary reference to distrust a transparent surface. Your living room window could literally be an invisible trap for a bird crossing your garden. You never knew because the body would fall far away or be carried away by another animal before you even realized it. Systemic pesticides, especially the neonicotinoid family, used extensively in agriculture and in home gardens as soil insecticides, eliminate the insects that form the base of the food chain for virtually all birds that visit gardens. They don't kill the birds directly. They do something slower and harder to track. They empty the menu. They remove the ecological foundation that made the garden a place worth visiting. A garden without insects is, for a bird raising chicks, a desert with a well-kept lawn. And artificial light at night isn't just a sleep problem. It disorients migratory birds that use the stars as a map. Radar studies show that birds migrating at night are attracted and trapped in cones of city light, circling in confusing patterns, exhausted, losing hours of focused flight. Some die of exhaustion. Others simply become disoriented enough to miss the ideal weather window for migration and not survive the journey. The predators you can see aren't the main problem. The main problem is the things you've created that you can't see as problems. Now expand the image. Because what's happening in your backyard isn't local. It's planetary. In 2019, a study published in the journal Science, using data collected over nearly 50 years, radar data, field observers, and censuses of bird populations across North America, arrived at a number that shocked the scientific world. Since 1970, North America has lost 3 billion birds. Not species. Individuals. 3 billion beings that existed and now no longer exist. A reduction of almost 30% of the continent's total bird population in less than half a century. And the species most affected are not the exotic ones, the rare ones, those that live in remote habitats. They are the common species. The sparrows. The thrushes. The starlings. Those that live in gardens. Those you saw in your backyard. In 1962, Rachel Carson wrote a book called Silent Spring. She described a future where the indiscriminate use of pesticides would produce a spring without birdsong, a silence that would signal a profound and irreversible ecological collapse. The book was treated as alarmist when it was published. The chemical industries tried to destroy her reputation. The scientific establishment of the time downplayed its conclusions. 60 years later, the silence she described is arriving. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Slowly enough for each generation to accept the level of silence it has inherited as normal. This is what researchers call shifting baseline syndrome. Each generation calibrates its sense of ecological normality based on the world it has found, without comparison to what existed before. And so, without anyone officially decreeing it, the world is becoming poorer, quieter, emptier, and no one notices because no one has access to what came before. Birds are the canaries of the mine. It's a metaphor that already exists, but it has gained a literal weight that transcends the metaphor. 19th century miners took canaries to coal mines because these birds were more sensitive to carbon monoxide and would die before the levels became dangerous to humans. The canary's song was the signal that the environment was still safe. The canary's silence was the alarm. The birds in your backyard are the canaries in your mind. And they are becoming silent. Not because they left. Not because they found better places. But because the environment we built around them, layer by layer, frequency by frequency, product by product, decision by decision, became a place where existence became too difficult. Where the signals that guided them for 100 million years are being overwritten by noise that we created without realizing we were creating a problem. Where the light we should appreciate is destroying the sleep of beings who need darkness to survive. Where the glass that gives us the feeling of being connected to nature kills the nature that tries to get closer. And all of this happens silently. In your backyard. Every day. While you're inside doing other things. Now go back to the beginning. To your backyard. To the silence you had accepted as normal. He is not normal. He is the result of an accumulation of choices, infrastructures, products, and indifference that have produced a world slightly less vibrant than yesterday's. And the day before yesterday's. And all the days that came before. But here's what separates this video from being just a list of problems. Each of the factors that keeps birds away from your yard can be reversed on a garden scale. Glass with stickers or screens that birds can distinguish from the air. Outdoor lighting with motion sensors that turn off when no one is around. Native plants that support local insects instead of sterile ornamental species. The decision not to use soil pesticides within a radius starting at your sidewalk. None of these actions can save the 3 billion that have already been lost. But each one can bring back the thrush that was sleeping poorly because of the lamppost. It can give the sparrow a garden that still makes sense to visit. It can restore to your backyard that level of life you didn't know you had lost until today. Silence is not inevitable. It is a choice that can be undone, one decision at a time. So here's the question I need you to take to the comments now. When was the last time you heard a bird sing in your backyard? And after everything you've discovered today, what do you think you'll do differently? One thing. It can be just one thing. Leave it in the comments. We read everything. And maybe someone's answer will inspire another person to do the same. Because the song that will return begins with the person who decided to pay attention to the silence. If this video touched you, share it. With someone who has a garden. With someone who lives in a city. With someone who still hears birds and doesn't know how long they'll continue to hear them. And if you're not yet subscribed to Wild Mindset, the door is open. The next video is coming soon. And it goes even deeper.